Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in once again to the Duval Dive. Of course, I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game, always ready to greet all you out there in the Duval Devout. And listen, as much draft as we've been talking and with the owners' meetings and all this other stuff, there's just been a lot of other things going on. There are just other questions that really, I'll be honest, this was a pet project episode for Kyle first and foremost. Because there's so many questions that are being asked or not asked enough or not answered enough that are just out there. And one in particular popped up out there from a tweet from our guest tonight. That's right, we have a special guest tonight here that was brought in, and we'll show you that graphic in a moment. But before I get into any of that, if I'm going to dive this deep, and maybe I don't have scuba gear, but you always have a buddy when you go and dive deep here, especially on a show called the Duval Dive. My personal champion, Big Cat Country's own Travis D. Holmes. I hope you brought your oxygen tank. We're going to be diving deep tonight, man.
Hey, man, I'm ready for it. Let's go. Let's get it in.
And listen, if there's anybody out here who comes on the Duval Dive with any regularity, now that I'm actually here to field him, the way he dives, one might even call him a dive master with the data scuba he gets into. Action Sports Jags. The work he does, he's even a former teammate of mine at Jaguars and SI, which, by the way, shouts to John Shipley, just for good measure. But I'll go ahead and bring him, finally get to do a show with him after much circling and all that stuff. The man they call Dan Griffis. DG's in the building. Good to have you, sir.
How are you doing, guys?
Honor, joy, and privilege. I see you are appropriately Final Four NCAA basketball dressed. I know what part of the country you live in. It's very clear. And, you know, with as much as Travis talked, or rather referenced stuff that Brett did the other day at the NFL meetings, it's only fitting we have more of the action team here on with you as the graphic guy doing your thing here. But you don't just make pretty pictures, Dan. However, there was a certain muse and this I saw from you on Twitter the other day. We'll go ahead and throw it up here about Chris Campanelli and his
Anthony Campanelli.
Yeah, I said Anthony Campanelli. I know a Chris Campanelli in my life. I'm going to do that again. So correct me.
He does it all the time.
Shout out, Chris.
Shout out to Chris. Yeah, my dude. He lives in another state now, but he's making a butt ton of money being an engineer. He's talented. What can I say? But Anthony Campanelli in the building. Let's be clear. And by the way, I like that Dan has his Twitter handle at the bottom, so he knows I'm referencing him appropriately. But the various stats here are interesting to see from Anthony's Campanelli's past here. Obviously, he's the run game coordinator for the Packers defense in the past. You know, little things here that were interesting. Heavy use of zone coverage. Packers ranked second in the use of zone coverage compared to the Jags last year under Coach Ryan Nielsen. See, I remember that first name, fellas. Low blitz percentage. Green Bay was 31st, but then compared to the defending Super Bowl champion Eagles at 28th versus the Jags at 32. Whether that matters, we'll get into that here. And also the mention of him being from the Vic Fangio tree, light boxes and match zone. Eagles had the lightest boxes in 24. Yeah, they relied a lot on that front four. That's a great point too, as well. So we bring up those little pieces in addition to the wonderful aesthetic handiwork that Dan's showing us here. You throw up a lot of stuff there, Dan, in reference to what we think Anthony Campanelli is going to do. But let's bottom line it. What do you think that actually means we're going to see on the field in 2025? And how does that translate to some of the stuff you see coming out in a lot of the mocks out there? Like, just as an example, Travis and I both mocked Mason Graham on our 1.0 Duval Dive mock draft episode. I think that's 2 or 3 weeks ago now. And I don't know that we would do that a second time, just how things have gone. But based on that, what we were talking about there, what do you kind of expect from Anthony Campanelli that we actually, you know, we dropped those numbers that you were talking about? What does that mean to you when you look at it as far as what you expect to see?
It was really out of my own curiosity. You know, we've heard so much already about what kind of style of offense Liam Cohen and Grant Udinski are going to bring to Jacksonville. And I was like, man, we just haven't really had the opportunity yet to get a lot of info from Cohen or Campanelli on what the defense is going to look like. And, the Jaguars, we kind of knew going into last year that the Jaguars were going to be really man heavy, except for Trent Baalke disagreed when we initially, when the Jags initially hired Ryan Nielsen. They're like, oh, maybe that's not true. And it's like, yeah, we're going to be man heavy. Quit playing with us. But yeah, it was out of my own curiosity to go look at where Campanelli comes from and to kind of give us an idea of what he could do in Jacksonville, because it's not like he's called plays before at any level that I'm familiar with. I believe he's been an assistant his entire coaching career, which I don't have anything against, but it doesn't give us really a good idea of what style of defense that he enjoys to run. So I was like, all right, who has he worked under? And Vic Fangio, who is the pioneer of the modern day defense in a lot of respects, especially with that too high shell. I expect a lot of that. Jaguars did run a lot of too high shells last year, so that part's not going to necessarily be new. But the zone versus man is, I think, something that behooves the Jaguars, especially with a guy like Tyson Campbell, who is infinitely better in zone than man coverage. He's struggled his entire career. Each year he's played in the NFL, he's had better numbers in zone coverage. We'll see what their plan is with Jerry and Jones on the back end. It sounds like they want to play him outside, which I don't have a problem with. But he did better last year in man, and has better man at FSU as well than he has in zone. I don't think he struggles in zone, but that's just another thing that I noticed. But I think with the way that the NFL has gone, and this is why the Vic Fangio defense has become so prominent, is a lot of quick passes. Initially, it was with the Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes of the world, where it's just attack everybody deep. And now what Fangio's defense is attempting to do is, all right, we're just going to backline the defense. Nothing gets past us. And if they run it on us a little bit, or get the screen game going, which is why you've seen a rise in the quick short passing game in recent years. If they do that and they want to beat us that way, fine, so be it. But we're gonna protect the back end. And with the quick passing game, you don't need to blitz as often. I'll look at the Jaguars offense the last several years. One of the least pressured offenses in the NFL, and it's because of that quick pressure game. So that's the kind of the ideology behind the Vic Fangio defense. But at that same time, you're basically putting your entire D line on an island, and it's, hey, you four, go beat their five. And it's in the run game and pass game.
You're reminding me of moving into my house because you just dropped a whole lot that I got to unpack right there, Dan. And let me lead with this too, because even though my personal champion Travis D. Holmes is a DB by trade, he's got a lot of defensive line points to make, and I'm going to back him on that. But before we jump into that quickly, I think the best way to kind of express why Jarian Jones, as a representative of the new wave of NFL corner, and how you use a young guy like that if he's good, versus it's all encompassed by a lot of the points you made in that his very first professional snap, Dan, he locks down Tyreek Hill in a man-to-man situation where he had to cover him. So I think that personification really kind of makes the point of everything you just said. We've seen why defenses nowadays, that Vic Fangio is kind of he's kind of the godfather of that defensive strategy right there. I understand where you're coming from. But you mentioned a lot of stuff from the defensive back point of view, which that's where a lot of the play calls come from. What draws my attention, though, is when you have a rotation style of defense, you have a guy, you don't know if you're putting him at D tackle or D end. You have Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker, but you're still mostly doing 4-man rushes with no help to speak of. I don't know. That's my defensive line point that jumps out, but I know that Travis had something he wanted to talk about with the defensive line in particular, so I'm going to give him the floor to let you chop that, chew on that fat with him.
Well, honestly, I mean, the big part for me was the fact that it was that Vic Fangio type of defense that we were talking about, and it kind of just it brought me back to a conversation you and I had a month ago, and I wanted to know your thoughts of how, like, if your feelings have changed or if your feelings have merged. I just kind of want to know what your thoughts about what you previously said versus how you feel right now. So I want to take a quick listen. Ooh, so what I'm hearing from you is.
Trayvon Walker is top 10 in most chipped. So offenses are taking him away. You have the 32nd pass rush defensive tackles. You do not blitz. You do not stunt. It's literally you're just sending Josh Allen and being like, all right, we'll try to get pressure. And it's a big reason why the Jaguars were 30th in pressure percentage with Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen is you're just literally sending – it's two guys running at each other, except for Trayvon Walker has to run through two guys.
Very well put, by the way.
Yeah. So now with this being a similar situation where you have a team that went from being the 32nd blitz team to a team that's going to be likely, if history is any indicator, the team that's going to be maybe 31st within, then how often they blitz. Does that give you any different feeling or any different flavor on how this is going to go with this Jaguars defense in comparison to the last year's Ryan Nielsen defense, even though they are different with zone and man?
Yeah, I think it certainly helps that you have your corners are going to be looking at the quarterback. So the secondary is definitely going to change there. I think it has to come from the interior, and part of that the article that went with that graphic that Kyle put up is how important the defensive tackles have been in the Vic Fangio system. You look when he was with the Rams, you have Aaron Donald. When Brandon Staley was there with the Rams, who adopted his scheme and kind of even further popularized it, and that's why he got the job with the Chargers. It didn't go well, but you have Aaron Donald in the middle, and then you look at the Eagles last year. Well, they've got like 4 Aaron Donalds. I used that facetiously, but you have Jalen Carter, you have Jordan Davis. Jordan Davis isn't a pass rushing phenom like Jalen Carter is, but you got the Brandon Grahams of the world, and this is we can line 4 guys up. Everyone across the line is better than the guy across from them, and that's doubly so inside the interior because they're not super edge heavy. They rotate guys, but that interior is so strong. So that's a reason where I was like, hey, if the Jags do go Mason Graham at 5. That fits this entirely well. And you're looking at making a Vic Fangio system. The interior is so important to that, and that's really fuel to the fire to really turn this Jaguars defense around.
So I'm happy you mentioned Mason Graham because this is the other point that I wanted to broach this. I wanted to broach it honestly. I wanted to talk about ball at 5:00 this morning when I sent that original tweet out talking about the fact that everyone's talking about everyone being on the trade block or everyone being, someone that could potentially be moved. No one's safe. Everyone's going crazy in Duval County. But in reality, like we've had discussions about the running back room and who could be on the trade block. We've had the conversations about even tackle. They moved on from Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk. Are we ever going to have a conversation surrounding this defensive line? I think that might be reasonable. If we're going to talk about everyone else, we should be able to talk about these guys also, because it's the Trent Baalke critical issue that we've seen with a lot of the people they end up moving on from is they're good at one thing. Maybe they're even great at one thing, but they're ridiculously bad at the other thing. If you're Brandon Scherf, you're the best pass blocking, guard that can be, and then you're just in the cellar in run blocking. If you're, if you're Christian Kirk, I don't know, you're great at a slot receiver, but you just can't move anywhere else, and you limit the offense in that way. Well, in this case, you got Mason Smith, who's we'll say problematic, at least if you're talking about in the run game. Like we knew that earlier in the season in 2024, but at least he was a rookie. Like again, PFF 133rd in per Pro Football Focus in his run defense grade, and he was 100th in defensive tackles and pass rush win rate. So he was arrow pointing up with pass rush win rate, but he was also pretty rough as far as the run is concerned. Well, on the opposite side of that line,
Jags wire to the graphic, by the way.
Jags wire, thank you. On the opposite side of that equation, you got Devon Hamilton. Great, incredible. If you're talking about someone stopping the run, the problem is he's second in the league in run stop win rate. Cool. But what does that mean for pass rush? He's literally in the cellar, 2%, or I believe it was 2.5% pass rush win rate. So he's great at one thing, just horrendous at the other thing. And teams will know that and just do the opposite thing when you're on the field. It's the same thing the same issue we have with the running back room. My question to you is, what does that mean for the defensive line? Is that why we need someone like Mason Graham? Because everyone tells what we're doing or what the opposite thing that should be done as far as the defensive line is concerned. Fair statement?
No. He either froze up or he's got a very intense face listening to you. I'll even add to that a bit too, because for all the critique of Mason Graham, and again, before somebody else comes out talking about how where Mason Graham stands and this, that, and the other thing.
Oh gosh.
Like we advocate for trading back from 5 if Travis Hunter's not there.
Absolutely.
We live. Okay. I had a great mock draft just just last night that had Ashton Genty at 16, baby. Whoa! Okay. That's what I'm talking about. Now is that real? Of course it's not. But that all being
there's a chance it could happen. Then in that old commercial, it could happen. Like it's fine.
I hear Dumb and Dumber. So you're telling me there's a chance. But I think the reason why Mason Graham is the fit is if you're looking to continue to send 4 guys and only 4 guys, you need dudes like that have the relentless motor, who may not get to the quarterback from play number 1, but by the end of the game, as the offensive line deteriorates, because typically every offensive lineman's a worse athlete than a defensive line. That's the job. As more as that happens, it's that later spot where you start taking advantage of the shortest route between 2 points that eventually happens there too. So from that perspective, rounding it back out and doing an excellent job of stalling, he said very modestly. What do you hope it like? What's the direction? And I think I'm capturing your question right, Travis. Like, are you looking for that Mason Graham type to start to be the next coming of continuing to send only 4, or do you see something different going on up front?
Well, let me summarize it for him just to make sure. I don't know if you caught all of it, Dan, but the gist of it is the Rams, for instance, just if you want to think about the philosophy of team building, the Rams average 65 to 75% of their snaps for their defensive linemen in 2024. We have multiple guys who may either struggle in the run game or struggle in the passing game, so they're probably going to struggle getting to that 65 to 75% snap rate consistently. Instead, you could just draft a guy like a Mason Graham who may be able to play at that rate, and you solve all those issues. You don't have to have 3 guys to do one job, etc. And I didn't even mention Eric Armstead, who may be a little bit more limited on his snaps because of his age, not because of skill or something like that. So that was kind of my question to you: does that hold weight? Do you think that that's something like that Devon Hamilton can't rush the passer? Do you think that Mason Smith just won't be able to get better at the run game? How do you feel about that as far as the roster building process?
Yeah, it's definitely a bunch of guys who are really specialized. Sorry for the intermittence there.
Technology is your fault. No, I'm kidding.
Internet. I live in the outskirts of Gainesville, so it's pretty tough. It's pretty tough around here. But yeah, it's you have a bunch of guys that are really specialized at certain things. And it's really hard to get them all on this. You're giving up a weakness every time you put one of them on the field. If you have Devon Hamilton on the field, it's like, all right, well, we're not going to get any help for Josh Allen and Trayvon Walker if they decide to call run play or pass play action. And then it's all right. Well, say the Jags don't draft a defensive tackle early. You have either Mason. I'd have to imagine if you want to be balanced, you have either Mason Smith or Eric Armstead at defensive tackle, and then Devon Hamilton next to him on general downs. And then if you go pass downs, you can have Armstead and Mason Smith next to each other. But and is that something that you feel great about? I don't.
Well, we had situations like that in the 2024 season where teams would run draws on us on 3rd and 5 and 3rd and 6, which is obviously blatantly passing downs, and they will still work because these are still guys who are problematic in that run thing. You feel confident that you can do that, and that's still a problem even on passing downs.
Well, and let's bring it back to the full course, because we don't want to go triple nerd on this and deep dive that much, because when you got a guy, when he steps on the field and you know what he's doing, golly jeepers, what's the P word that Shad Khan's trying to avoid? Predictable. So that's the piece that got my attention, is if that's still happening, then what? Because we just already had, what is it, a 1-year campaign for Ryan Nielsen for allegedly being too predictable, right? So I don't know.
You're concerned that this could be predictable, just different, but equally predictable.
I don't think the secondary part is at all predictable, and the Vic Fangio quarters zone match scheme. I don't think that part is as predictable. It should definitely help you with those big gainers, but at the same time, for whatever reason, the Jaguars struggled mightily with knowing their responsibilities and roles in a man scheme. So you're bringing in a zone match quarters, cover 6, cover 8 defense. And it's like, all right. I mean, luckily there's going to be a lot of different pieces on the back end of the Jaguars defense secondary this year. So maybe you see some growth there. But yeah, it's the secondary part of it's going to be infinitely more complicated for them and for opposing offenses in this defense, I would suspect. If we
could argue that it could be easier. That's the interesting part, because they came from Mike Caldwell running a boatload of zone, and it wasn't the same type of zone, but it's still generally
true. But who's there left? It's just Tyson.
What you're going to do my dude Dewey?
Tyson and Dewey. You got Tyson and Dewey.
And Montgomery Brown's still there, isn't he? Like, what we do? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, I get you, but Tyson is better in zone, so at least there's that. Like there's some there as far as that piece is concerned. But in overall, you have someone who's more of a veteran presence in Eric, in Eric Murray, Jordan Lewis. If you bring in 2 guys like that, however limited you may feel that they are, because I've heard that across the fan base, they haven't even seen the guy play much, but they just read PFF and just assume it's true. I think that these are guys who are veteran talents who are able to kind of communicate and at least get guys in the right place at bare minimum. That held significant weight for me as a DB, because I know the better you can communicate, that's half, if not 60% of the game. Athleticism is the last 10%. That put you over the top. So I'm a fan of the signings for that purpose only. But I think, again, it might be a little bit easier for these guys who seem to be better suited to zone. And, I don't know.
So, I am curious to see Darnell Savage this season. I liked a decent part of it last year. I struggled at times, but I'm curious. I feel like everyone's talked about on the defense. I haven't seen a lot of Darnell Savage talk this offseason.
I'll be real with you. I can't even say 50-50. I'm probably closer to 60-40 that I'm not sure he's going to be on the roster in week 1.
Let's get back to that in a minute, because we've transitioned fully into DB talk. I want to see what the comments have to add in here on the line first before I let these 2 data gators start chewing on this other meteor coming up. So of course, You got. I love the dudes that pop in hours before the damn show starts and already hitting us up. You guys are the real ones, man. It's not Robert this time, but Radius
is in a different time zone, man. He's like, it's midnight when this is starting. So okay. I respect.
Of course, this is not hating. This is appreciating. He jumps in, and I think he stayed on with us to watch his grab bag question, which again led nicely here into this Anthony Campanelli conversation. So there's that. Robert jumps in from the results of the rules that were passed here involving the kickoff. I'm sure we'll be talking more about that, especially as things look like they're going Travis Hunter, we got to have special teams conversations at some point, because if he is in the building, you got to wonder if he's doing any special teams at all. Robert, of course, taking some shots at DG. That's a very gracious response, DG. Well done.
Diploma's right there.
There you go. Right. Cedric Combs jumps in. He says, "What's up?" And then admits the truth. We all seem to believe at the moment this regime is smarter than the last one. I truly believe that. And well, I'll now ask you real quick here, Dan. Like, our belief here on the Duval Dive, whether Gladstone, whether this triumvirate of rookies at their front office positions make it or not, the healing can begin because the bulky of the pain is gone. See what I did there? Yeah. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I've had this conversation with some other people. The biggest problem with Balky wasn't even how well he did at GM. He could have been the best GM, and I think I had this conversation with Travis when I was on with him. He could be the best GM in the world, but if no one's willing to work with you, it doesn't matter.
Oh, that's item number 3. Yeah, I wouldn't even take it there, but that's a good point.
And so, you look at that, and he didn't. His drafting wasn't god awful. The Trayvon Walker pick over Aiden Hutchinson is really bad. But I think that the getting people to work with him is the biggest issue there. And I think that was something that hindered the Jaguars the last 2 coaches. The Jaguars kind of had to lead their way back around to Doug Peterson because a lot of people wouldn't work with Trent Baalke. It happened again this year where we had to lead ourselves back around to Liam Cohen. And, but I really am excited for James Gladstone. I'm a data guy. So that part's exciting. And I've been kind of, pushing for. I was a huge Kyle Shanahan fan when the Jaguars were looking for a coach that had Marone over Shanahan. I really liked Mike McDaniel. I was like, look at what this dude's doing with the. You could put Travis back there, running back for the Niners 4 or 5 years ago, and he could run for. You don't think so? I do.
But I appreciate it.
He would have, how they do that challenge. Can you gain 1 yard in the NFL? He would have done that and then be like, bump this, my knees hurt.
Sure. I mean, they were pulling dudes off the street. They'd start for 1 game, run for 130 yards, and then they'd never see him again.
Meanwhile, Garoppolo would have what was it in the 1 game, like six passes on the entire game and still work the Packers. No, I got you, brother. Hey, by the way,
Kevin O'Connell.
Mentioning the 49ers, this is the other place where not working with Baalke was a problem, right? That's the whole reason Jim Harbaugh has a freaking national championship. Anyway.
I'm generally with Dan on this, but I'm also I will push back just a little bit and say the fact that we're saying his drafting wasn't god awful is also that is some truth that we're trying to hide behind because we're trying to be nice, and I'm not that nice. I want to be clear. No, he was a bottom 3rd GM at best, and I'm talking drafting. And if you add free agency in it, I think he might be a bottom 5th. Like,
I didn't mention free agency.
We're not even close to saying that this guy's a good GM. And honestly, and I've said this to many people I've talked to around the league and in the media, like, no, I think being a general manager, honestly, is one of the hardest but also easiest jobs. It's a weird thing to say. Like, it's if you the less information and the farther you get away from some of these guys and the decisions to give, like, I think this job actually gets easier because you talk to a lot of fans who have nothing to do with the league, nothing to do with any of this stuff, and they're just like, yeah, that's the guy to pick. He's obviously the best guy to pick. I just watched this film. He's easily that's the guy you should pick in free agency. That's the guy you should pick in the draft, of course, because his film is the best. He's the best player. And then you get the GMs and they get all the additional information on they know his grade school teacher. They know the other players he plays with. They know what kind of a leader he is in the locker room. And they raise these guys up the draft boards, and it muddies up the tape evaluation. And we're just looking at the tape and saying, nah, man, that's the guy. Give me that dog. Give me that guy. And that sucks because what I'm saying is the layups. are allowed to be missed because of all the additional information, basically, with a lot of GMs. So I think if you can make the layups more often than not, you're going to be an incredible GM. And that's the crazy thing. An incredible GM is just the one that says, yeah, of course, give me the guy. My draft board more often than not looks like the consensus boards, and I'm just grabbing the top guys. These are layups. Is that fair?
And
Aiden
like
Hutchinson,
I'm like and and that was it was all everyone. I think about 31 GMs would have taken Aiden Hutchinson, and the Jaguars took Trayvon Walker. And like I'm about as big a fan of Trayvon Walker as I really am proud of how he has developed into an NFL player.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, he's not Aiden Hutchinson. He could be the second best defensive player in the NFL last season, and he still would have been the wrong pick. Aiden. Okay. So, like, seriously.
I'm not saying you're wrong about that point, Dan, but if I think this is one of those where, like, the roof of the house is on fire, but you and Travis are complaining about the door handle to the front door. Hold on, y'all. What about the fact, why is Tank in the building at running back? He was not the pick where you needed what you needed. We need to be talking about those picks. Those are what makes him where we have to say not god awful. I get that Trayvon's
Tank is in the building because they didn't want to pay ETN.
Hey,
that's why Tank's in the building.
I'm talking to the guest, Travis. I know what you think. So, but I mean, that's the question I would pose you, Dan, is like, we pay all this attention to Trayvon, and okay, sure. And I'm pulling numbers out of my butt. I don't really know what the numbers are. One's a Madden 97 and one's a Madden 93. Are we really that mad about that?
If one becomes a Hall of Famer and one gets 10 sacks, yeah. So, but in regards to the day 2 picks or your Brenton Stranges, your Tank Bigsby's, I'm interested to see what becomes of those players now that everyone's gone in the building. Because like we looked at Brenton Strange last year and he was having some phenomenal games, and then you get to the Eagles game where everyone's hurt. I can't even remember who was the receiver. He played a little bit in the preseason. Then he dropped. No, he dropped the
Elijah Cooks.
No,
Josiah Cephas.
Oh, if you're talking about the guy that dropped the pass at the end, that wasn't a receiver. That was Darius Johnson.
No. The punt.
The A-word guy. A-word last name. I forget his name.
Brenton Strange.
He was a punt returner.
Yeah, and he was getting receiver snaps.
Yeah.
Brenton Strange had nine snaps that game. He had
Austin Trammell. Trammell. There you go.
He had a career high statistically the week before because Evan Ingram was hurt. Comes into the Eagles game, plays 9 snaps. And I was like, I don't understand this. We have no receivers on the field right now. Brenton Strange was looking really, really good. He was coming off a career high game, and then he was averaging like 35 snaps a game. That's pretty solid for your second tight end. And then it's just, all right, we don't have anybody. Everyone's hurt. We're not going to have Brenton Strange on the field. So I'm curious as to the disconnect there between the coaching staff and the GM. And there was, like Tank Bigsby as well, to where it's like, all right, I'd like to at least see Mason Smith, who we just never played. And then he comes on in the last 4 or 5 games. It's like, whoa, this dude might actually be good. I wonder what we could have seen for the, previous at the start of the season anyways, before he was hurt. But, there's some things that don't quite match up there as regards to the players that the GM brings in and the coaching staff. BTJ, who we just didn't target until week 13.
That's ridiculousness.
The Eagles game, they went 6 consecutive quarters without targeting him. It was between the Eagles game and the Minnesota game. I forget which 2 games, but I was like, what are we doing here?
I feel like this is my fault. Like, I asked a question and I should have known it was going to take you here. This is my bad, Dan. Let me get back to some of these.
Well, no, it's valid. It's valid because you could say, well, you could look in the draft and be like, all right, well, who could we have taken? And they could have made, much bigger impacts or been starters, or you look at the Jaguars drafted Ventrell Miller. It's like, all right, do we really need him? He came in and played adequately this season, especially in run defense, but you could have probably gotten better value in those selections instead, rather than drafting backups at positions that aren't considerably high value. Tight end, running back, and linebacker.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, I get it this way, especially in the era where running back's supposed to be allegedly devalued, right? But let me get a few more comments here. And I want to touch on Mason Smith because I know Travis has a few good points to him with that particular instance, because I know for me it's a big question mark. Travis has a take that takes a nice direction. I still don't know that I know what to think exactly, but so we'll get to that in a second. I did want to get the Cedric Holmes comment here. No relation, I assume, Travis. Also, don't be surprised if the first 3 rounds belong to Trevor Lawrence. That's the rumor to be. First of all, that to me involves people in the Ted McMillan camp. We have covered this at length on this show. Dan, I'll give you a minute to comment on that first, but also I feel like if that includes trading back to 16 and getting Ashton Genty, Cedric, cool. But it's I think you're either looking at that, the tight end. There's been a lot of talk surrounding that. Obviously, offensive line protection. The whole. I will pose the question selfishly, Dan. I'm of the opinion that if we get a tight end, second, third day would be ideal if you're going to do it at all. But I'm this point, start Brenton Strange and UDFA, right? You didn't get the corner I wanted at that pick 2 years ago. You've made your bed, now lie in it. You mentioned Brenton Strange coming along. I'm feeling better about him as a starter than ever before. And then at the receiver end too, I feel like further down the draft, you can get a guy that, hasn't admitted to hating watching film. So unless it's Mumbu, assuming Campbell's gone already, of course. If it's not Mumbu in the first round, I'm and Gray's able if you trade down. I have to say it now, Travis. I know. But I mean, in the first round, what as an offensive choice jumps off to you at 5, unless you're counting Travis Hunter as a dual threat?
Travis Hunter.
It's like,
so you got Will Campbell too.
So I'll tell you exactly what I would.
Go ahead.
What I would do. So one, if everyone was there, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, Mason Graham, 1, 2 in that order, and then trade back. Because if all 3 of them are gone, the quarterbacks haven't been taken. Right. So it leaves at least one on the board. I mean, have to imagine someone's coming out.
I preferenced as much on the Fans First Sports Network. So on my why Abdul getting Carter first overall is a bad thing. You mentioned the previous article too when we had your graphic up earlier for Anthony Campanelli. Where would we find that real quick, DJ?
actionsportsjacks.com. I started I'm in my 2nd month with them. So it's been great. I'm writing 4 articles a week. During weekdays, and then they use my graphic and articles to create some discourse on the Brent and Austin show, which is 10 to 1 every day on Action Sports Jacks as well.
Brent's a good dude too, by the way. I just wanted to show you how to do a proper plug, because if you don't give me a website to go to, I can't give you a bell. So you got to work with me on that, DJ. Hey, I mean, as often as I link back to you at a Jaguars on SI, I would think you would hand me the ball to pimp your stuff. Anyway. Storm the Desert. My favorite handle still in the comments. Good of you to come back, Storm. They've got to be able to stop something. If they can't contain the run or the pass, then you're straight just guessing. Instead of setting up for forcing the offense into something. Yeah, I think we've alluded to that several times here with predictability and whatnot too. That's a good point. Robert's talking about someone getting gator bit. I mean, Robert's a good guy. He's going to let you know.
When he got kicked out, he was like, he got gator bit. And I'm like, oh, come on. All right. That's good. Dewey Wingard will do whatever you tell him to do. Hey man, that's facts. Like Dewey will be in the right spot no matter what. I give him credit on that. Like he will not get beat deep if it's cover 3. Like that's what it is. Tell him to stay over top. Everyone, he will. Tell him to play in the box. He will. He might not be the best, but at least he listens.
You pulled that
Hey.
comment out just so you could give that speech again because you said it last week on the Duval dive.
I'm here for it, bro. Like he's not wrong. Like no, Dewey is not gonna lose his job. Dewey is that old man that you know that been to jail once, and he finally got that job, and he's like, I ain't messing this up. Y'all ain't messing this up for me. Hell no. Like I'm gonna be on time. I'm gonna be in my spot on the clock. Like that's what that is. That Dewey is not mess. He ain't playing around with y'all.
No.
He's gonna play that coverage perfectly.
Storm dropping bombs, man. I'm with that. There is one thing I want to touch with you here, DG. Robert jumps in, asking you a legitimate question or making a legitimate comment, I think, between all the Gator Schmack talk. O-line isn't as deep as D-line. Don't be surprised if they pick a tackle. Now, you've already made your point about the pick, but I want to get both your opinion. You too here, Travis, but let's start with Dan. Do you think the offensive line group is less deep than the D-line? I don't know that I agree with that today. What say you, Dan?
I don't think it's weak. I'm not sure it's as strong as the D line, but I don't think it's a weaker class in general. I
think he means the current roster on the Jaguars.
Oh, I thought we were talking NFL draft class.
Yeah, no. Or actually, maybe he is talking the draft class. You know what? That's a good point. I took it.
Yeah, he's saying don't be surprised if it's a tackle for the pick because
the value drops off.
Class isn't as deep as the D-line class.
Well, so my and as to why I said those 3 and then trade back is because are we going to put Walker Little back at left guard? Are we back there again? Because I thought we'd moved past this, and I like Walker Little as a left tackle. I would think
he would be the right guard before the left one. Yeah.
Well, we have a few tackle options who have a little bit of versatility, like Nate Tice on dang it, and I hate been not giving guys the right credit or the right plugs, but I forget the podcast because I watch a lot of people's podcasts often. Basically said it inside of one of his mock drafts. He's like, hey man, Will Campbell's the pick for Jacksonville. And he made a point that I hadn't heard before. He's like, no, but think about his positional flexibility. It's the main thing that Jacksonville's been talking about this whole offseason. They got Patrick McCarry because he was so flexible as he can play all 5 positions across the O-line. Guess who else can do that? Will Campbell. Like, he can literally play all 5 positions. And he's like, so if you want him to be your starting right guard, he can do that. You want him to play your left tackle and your right tackle, he can do that. And I'm like, dang, that's a good point.
I heard this takes, I don't know if it was from him or somebody else, but what came to my mind was if Trent Baalke was still the GM, I would predict that would be his pick, would be Will Campbell at 5. Assuming he's there. I'm still kind of convinced
depending on his arm length. Yeah, it's arguable whether or not it's 33 inches. So that's the whole part that matters.
Yeah, I don't know if Baalke was choosing him to be a guard. I think that we're probably there. But also, if the Jaguars take Will Campbell, are you going to take a guard at 5?
That's the question. He's a guard at 5, but he's also a guard who can be your left tackle or right tackle of the future at 5. He's a developmental right tackle, but he's playing guard right now.
So that's kind of where I'm at with because if you're gonna take a tackle, then you could trade back a couple of picks and sit there and take whichever of Membo or Campbell. Just take whichever, or you could look at a guy like Ted McMillan or a guy like Will Johnson, and I'm fine with any of that as trade backs. 5 is really rich for me for guard. Or or if you play him at tackle, then I'm just really confused with Walker Little.
Well, Walker Little wasn't your decision, Mr. GM. Like,
True.
If you are James Gladstone, they say, hey man, they ain't my decision. I ain't got nothing to do with that. The last guy burnt your money. I'm just trying to build you the best team.
True. You got a really expensive, unpolished left guard then, or right guard, whichever. But I'd lean Travis Hunter. Dual Carter would be really interesting. What you would do there, but at the same time, like he's stupid good. So it's like, do you really want to pass that up?
There's no way to get there. I'm convinced of that, Dan. That's a great. that's that great problem to have conversation, buddy. I just don't think he's going to be there, man.
So I'm really Travis Hunter, Mason Graham, and you can fill out the offense in day 2, and I'm fine with that. I don't think we need a Jesus Christ in the draft at receiver with BTJ, De'Ami Brown, Gabe Davis, and Parker Washington. I think it definitely needs help. I don't even know that Ted McMillan is the best receiver in this class. I'm not fully convinced of that, so that's why I'm really adverse to taking him at 5. But if they trade back and it's something similar to what they did with like BTJ last year, who I would have been dismayed with if they picked him at, was it 19? I wasn't a huge
trade back.
Yeah, admittedly I wasn't a huge BTJ fan, and that was basically just because LSU used him poorly. Where he just ran a couple of routes, and then he comes to Jacksonville and is just so much more of a polished receiver in Jacksonville than he ever was at LSU. And I'm happy to be wrong there. It's just it's kind of where for us, when we don't get that extra information that you were talking about earlier with guys, it's kind of hard to make predictions or rankings without actually talking to these players and seeing what else they can do aside from game tape. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm thinking. I'm fine with either Hunter or Mason Graham. I'd be interested to see Travis Hunter playing both sides. That'd be really, really fun.
Yeah. Why did Dan ever fill in for me? Because all he's doing is saying the same ish you say all the time, Travis. What the hell? Like that's the same.
Man, great minds think alike.
That's the same Brian Thomas Jr. take. That's the same Mason Graham take. That's the same Travis Hunter take. Come on, man. I know great minds think alike, but come on.
We both watch film. He digs into the data like no other. And a lot of the time I'm talking to him in the DMs and we still going back and forth about what the data shows and coming to agreement on a lot of these kind of conversations. So yeah, we might land on some same opinions because hey man, the data is what it is and the film is what it is. But so yeah.
He don't care about your failings.
He told me before I came in here, he's like, hey, Kyle and I are on different sides of the field here. If you could provide some insight and data to help me out, and so that's what I've been doing.
Yeah.
Well, he always needs help because I shoot him down in arguments all the time. It's great.
Oh my!
What? I only read the first 4 words, and I was like, "What are we doing here?"
This is why I need to take rights away from you to look up comments. You don't go to the comment immediately about Casey Anthony. No, I'm kidding. Put it back up, Travis. I'm joking,
dude.
Bulky.
There's goodness.
Oh gosh, that's terrible.
Speaking of the short arms,
yes.
I was the one that did the data study on edge players with and if arm length matters, it doesn't.
Surely.
So it's actually got a negative connotation, mainly because edge players are getting smaller in general, and speed and quickness is what's being utilized.
First.
Yeah. So that's you look at Micah Parsons, Abdul Carter. That's kind of the direction the NFL is going at edge. So that's part of the reason that arm length isn't as important now as maybe it was statistically significant 20, 30 years ago, but currently that's no longer the case.
So, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
You want to run a breeze to the rest of these comments? Hey man, I know we're a little over, but I want to give these guys their voice.
Once again, we're giving the people what they want, and they're here in spades.
I'm here all night.
Holy. Well,
we love it. We heard him. We go hold him to it. We gonna hold him to it. He said here all night. Let's go. All right.
Hank Biggs. I was gonna dodge this, but okay, go for it, Travis. You pulled it up. Let's do this.
Well, no, he's not saying anything that we haven't already said. He's just saying it in a much more a rougher way. I mean, I'm not saying like he's the worst passing back I've ever recently seen, nothing like that. But I am saying he was probably the worst passing protection back out of the bunch. I don't think that's an over exaggeration. Travis Etienne was close, but yeah, Dearness Johnson was easily the best in that bunch. You have an opinion on that?
No, Travis Etienne allowed the second most pressures of any running back last year, and I believe, if I remember correctly, he was the PFF's worst pass blocking graded running back.
But they also didn't put Tank in those positions very often because
it was
really bad.
I'm just saying it's not, like it wasn't that much better with Etienne, which is why we saw Dearness Johnson on the field as much as we did. But also, like, that doesn't mean you have to throw to him on key downs to win the game either.
But it's like you're playing 5-on-4 at that point. That's the part that sucks with your running backs. It's like you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And that's why people are still questioning, is running back still a need? We have both of these great. Hey, man, we keep talking about the limitations of these guys. That's the problem. Either they're great at one thing or they're terrible at another. Like if you have one or two guys on your roster like that, or on each side of the ball like that, you can coach around that. When you got 5 and 4 guys.
They're drafting RJ Harvey day 3 anyway. Who cares? Anyway,
I think
RJ Harvey, who has significant experience out of a shotgun system, but not extensive experience out of under center. Also, that ain't great. That ain't perfect. Like it has opportunity at least to not go right. I'm just being real about that. And I'm an RJ Harvey supporter. I'm a former UCF player. Like, trust me, I'm not against it, but I'm just being real about that.
I'll put it this way. Thank you, sir. I've seen enough to where. Well, and I mean, even Dan will tell you, maybe KJ Jefferson couldn't throw the ball a lick, but he still put up 87 yards. Was the whole reason UCF put any points on the board there in the Swamp last season. The whole, what's his word? The whole shotgun versus
under
center. Thank you. I don't know what the heck just happened. Under center versus a shotgun. To me, I would imagine RJ Harvey would love life getting a handoff from under center rather than the damn shotgun, because you heard Deion Sanders say it best. Everybody and my mama's gonna go in the box to try to stop that dude. This would be the most relief he's gotten in years with the defense worried about Brown and BTJ down the field. The only reason why it's not going to be even more great is because Ingram's not there anymore. So I don't know. That's not what I said on that. You got me on a tangent, Travis. I blame you.
My bad. But I'm happy I got worked up. But I'm just trying to be it's just like I'm honest with UCF players versus other colleges. I'm honest with Jaguar players versus other NFL teams. I'm just trying to be honest, acting like I'm not a fan of that organization.
Look, yeah, I'm the one that passed on BJ Adams on my mock draft. I'm all about that life too. Let's be clear. Anyway. What you got here in the
people downgrading Tech McMillan, saying he's so slow and can't release, bro. Tech on this team would be a huge upgrade from Gabe Davis. It's not like the man is going to be an X receiver. He's going to be a Y. Yeah, but that doesn't change the film though. Like again, I was happy to see Steve Smith on his do his yearly breakdown of all the receivers, and he just 24 hours ago came out saying a lot of the same stuff I've been telling y'all all off season. When I watched 5 games of Tech McMillan, I came away saying I wouldn't draft him in the top 5, and y'all flamed me for it. And now we got another ball knower who I consider a legitimate ball knower saying, "Hey man, this dude comes off the line slow. He's not physical through contact, through press coverage. He's not being aggressive on these contested catches, which is weird because he's also has a 50% contested catch rate." But he's playing against a lot of shorter guys. In the NFL, that ain't what you're playing against. You're playing against a lot taller dudes, a lot more dolls, a lot less sorry teams, honestly, a lot less shorter guys. So you're going to go against a lot better competition, and that contested catch rate cannot be the only thing or the primary thing you're good at. And that means you're not going to be a top 5, top 10 guy. I'm just sorry. That's kind of them the rules. I mean, if you disagree, let me know then. I don't know, man.
So you said you wouldn't take him in the top 5. I wouldn't take him in the top 10. And I like Tip McMillan, but if I'm drafting you in the top 10, like I want Julio or BTJ or like you.
Ooh,
Justin Jefferson.
Would you take AJ Green?
Yes.
All right. That's the comp. That's supposedly his comp. Is AJ Green?
Oh,
so
is it really? Wow. I'm not. Come on.
They say he's not Drake London because he's not aggressive enough. He's not physical enough. But this is Steve Smith talking. This is not my words. This isn't me. He's like, if there's a comp, it's
I
AJ
feel like
Green.
At that point, people are forgetting what AJ Green was in the day. Like
he was finesse.
He was, yeah, sure, maybe, but he was the weapon in Cincinnati.
All right.
That's what I mean.
All right.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying Thompson receiver. So,
well, I mean, what if he had Matt Ryan instead of Andy Dalton?
I'm trying to tell you.
But
we got Trevor Lawrence. I mean, that's work. That's doable. I mean, we gonna if he's a number 2 receiver too.
Yeah, so I like Ted McMillan. If you're drafting him at 14, I'm all there. 5 though is rich as hell.
Really rich.
And
and that's before you get to the off the field conversations or whether or not he's going to have the actual effort put into when he gets those tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah, y'all are gonna miss me on the Vincent Jackson talk. I was like 7, so
I put that out more for Travis than for you, but I appreciate your honesty. Hef comes in with bangers like that on a question. So, I just want to let Travis see that one. And hey, listen,
RIP, man, RIP.
If Ted McMillan has a career as long and productive as Vince Jackson, then you know what? More power to him. He still shouldn't be picked at 5, in my opinion, either. I just.
And I don't think he's a bad player. I just like.
I don't think anyone think he's bad.
If we're picking between 5 and 10, I want to know lineman.
Okay, I can get behind that. Travis, I wanted to go over your Mason Smith point. I don't think we're going to have that opportunity. Go ahead, Travis.
It's okay. I want to give the people the time with their comments because again, we're approaching an hour at this point. So that was a good call by you. We're gonna talk about this on the next podcast. So definitely like and subscribe if you're listening to us, or whatever your podcatcher. Please rate and review us. We love this, man. Help us with this algorithm while this thing is free, man. Come on, Cedric. Remember, Trent drafted Trevor, but gives him no weapons or O-line. Trent also tried to give away BTJ, but got lucky when he fell to him. I presume he means Taven Bryant, another disappointing disaster.
But
we got to get over this. We got to get.
That's what I was gonna say.
We got to get past this. We got to get past this hurt because right now we sound like the ex that moved on and is with a new boyfriend and is still out here in these streets trying to show off this new boyfriend to your old group. Like, nah, man, we good. We on to the next one. If we over this hurt, we gotta shoot. We got to get past this and just like let's talk about the new man on the street, Mr. Gladstone, Mr. Duval. Come on, man. We good, baby.
That was a decade ago.
Right?
Almost.
You're in trouble when DG's the one telling you get over it. It was 10 years.
Oh man. So the draft lacks starters. Little had the highest
He's
grade.
still in the league, isn't he?
Who is?
Taven. He was with the Colts.
Taven Bryant was with the Colts last I remember. Yeah, he was still in the league. Doing his thing. I guess he's saying Anton had a 63 grade. I'm presuming he's referencing PFF. He should be worried.
We've had this conversation. Yeah, of course. With all the you got to fight for your job this year, gentlemen.
This is competition. These are vets. It may be undrafted free agents when they came in, but these are guys who have played significant snaps in the NFL. They have the veteran tools and all the veteran tricks, and they got that dog in them. They're not going to lay down and just give you the role because you were the starter under a failed regime. So yeah, absolutely, we agree with you, Robert. Anton's going to have to work. I don't think that's news.
He did play significantly better in the back half of last season than
the start. I would argue the schedule is a little easier towards that back half too.
Yeah, I was just going to say that we knew before the season started the team was going to play better in the back half of the season.
Not that the Jags defensive play would have shown that at all. They got run over by it didn't matter who. They played the second or is either the first or second easiest schedule against offenses. And still we're the 32nd NFL ranked defense. So that's to pour more salt into the wound there.
That's a hell of a stat drop. Action sports in the building.
Nice. This is the best depth at O-line we have had in a long time, which I probably don't think I would disagree on.
I'm there.
You guys, yeah, you with it? Will Campbell in the Sear Premier. Will Campbell at 5 is nasty work. Why is it? I don't understand why it's nasty work. You want a good O-line or not, man? What y'all doing? Like these are the options. You want a good O-line or you don't want a good O-line. Like if you want to be struggling week 12 when you can't run the ball.
I think Campbell's good enough as a player to warrant that. If you don't consider position importance, I think. He's probably up there.
So half from the top ropes. Maxwell Harrison is a name to watch in round 2. Yeah, I mean, I like Harrison. He's good. I saw his workout video with Will Campbell and Ted McMillan and all those guys. They were working out together at the speed training.
For the pod listeners, I got to let the people know how widely up and down Dan was nodding his head in agreement with you, Travis. He's all about that life. I don't know.
I'm here for that. Nasir wants us to draft Mimbo, kick Anton to left tackle, and Walker Little back to swing tackle. Wow. Walker Little gonna hurt somebody, bro. If y'all just signed that man to a contract extension after he was getting ready to leave Jacksonville, and then they move that man back to swing tackle, he might punch somebody, like legitimately. And I actually can't even blame him, but I think it's hilarious.
The paycheck could ease the pain somewhat.
Not hilarious. I don't. Definitely ironic.
I don't. That turns. You already have uncertainty along the offensive line, and that just doubles down on that or compounds it. The problem. I don't know if I'm there on that.
Why?
One.
Well, why? What's the problem with the uncertainty in the offensive line when your offensive line was already like bottom of the league? Is that a problem to have uncertainty?
I don't. Walker Little played pretty well last season when he played at left tackle.
Yeah.
Anton Harrison has never played left tackle in the NFL. And he played it at Oklahoma. But like that's looking back a ways now. That's 3 years ago. And like we've already moved Walker Little all over the line. He's played best at left tackle of all of the spots that he's played. He's getting better every year, substantially. And I don't know that you need to make. I agree that Walker Little is a better run blocker than Anton Harrison. I'm there with that. Anton Harrison didn't run block it in college because he played at Oklahoma, and the Big 12 has not found out how to run the ball unless you're Oklahoma when they had Samaje P. Ryan.
At that time, it was the Big 12, I should say. But anyways.
Correct, yeah. But yeah, I basically
you're thinking leave Walker Little. If you move anybody, you move Anton, and you're not even saying that that's necessarily the route they should go. Was that a fair?
Yeah, I think you already got guys who can play everywhere, and I'm fine with that. And you have some flexibilities to where you play Patrick McCarry, whether you want him to be left guard or right guard. You have. I like Ezra. I think Ezra across the entire year last season. I think Ezra was our best offensive lineman. In regards to both, Brandon Sheriff might have been a better pass protector. I don't think anybody was a better run blocker than Ezra Cleveland last year. I
thought Walker Little was.
Yeah. He'd be the closest. But that right side of the line was ugly last year, which is hilarious because this is why people be careful of statistics. And I have to be careful when doing this. So the Jaguars, if you look at how they ran the ball, left versus right or gaps, whatever, they actually ran the best statistically behind Brandon Scherf. And why is that? Is because Tank Bigsby had like 3 or 4 runs where he broke some ungodly tackle and ran for 60 yards a la against the Colts. He was supposed to get negative yards on that run and ended up getting 55, 65, something like that. So it skews the stats to look a lot more favorably on that right side than what it actually should have been.
So I'll leave that to that. We're over an hour, and listen, like Travis is doing to you what Dave Chappelle did with DMX when he was a guest on his show. Like he would talk about, okay, hey, have a good night, everybody, and then he pushed the button and he just start rapping again. So I know if Travis hits the button again for another comment, my dude DG instead of DMX will start rapping again. It'll be great. All that being said, Dan Griffis. Action Sports, man, thanks for coming on. I had a fantastic time. Who knows if I wasn't stepping in to talk some Orlando Magic here on a Fan Search Sports Network podcast, I might stay a little longer. But despite the fact I got that, we'll talk again at some point. I don't know what it is. I know in the preseason when you tell me players to watch before every preseason game, I'm gonna look at that religiously as I did at Jaguars on SI and all of it. But make sure you check out his stuff. Dan, tell the world where you could be found.
Yeah, I just want to apologize earlier for the hiccup. I was
Yes, Gainesville Technology is your fault. All of it. No.
GRU has a monopoly. But no, I'm trying to put out. It's just slow season, so I'm It's been fun finding content because I'm writing 4 articles a week. And they're pretty in-depth articles doing my data analysis on a lot of the players, but it's, trying to give fans a better idea of who the coaches are coming in, what the Jaguars have in terms of their roster, and maybe where they need some help and who they could go after. Yesterday's was Travis Hunter, and I wanted to look at what he could offer both as a receiver and a corner, but you can find all of that on actionsportsjags.com.
See, I'm already thinking of more questions I need to ask you. Maybe I need to bring you in for a one-off episode and not just for a stream.
What? Let's go.
Travis, tell the world.
Yeah, we're about to give y'all boys another 30 minutes. And maybe we should have just taken this bad boy into overtime. But yes, you can find me in all of my writings, bigcatcountry.com. Absolutely lock it in, save it as your favorites. And you want to talk Jaguars? You want to talk any other NFL teams? You want to talk college football, maybe even some CFL, some Canadian Football League? We can talk about all this because I am locked in right now. This is the time, man. Travis D. Holmes on all the socials. I do not have draft fatigue. Nasir Premier. This is not where we are. Topa, I hear you. Will Johnson, I'm here for it. Let's go. Thank you for all the comments. Again, you boys need to know this was supposed to be a 30-minute podcast, but y'all brought it. I mean, I apologize for the 25, 30 comments that we weren't able to get to, but hey, that just lets us know we need to do this live thing a little more often to give you boys a voice. So yeah, come back, like and subscribe. Absolutely, man.
And guys, hit us up on the socials too. All the stuff in the comments that you do want us to build on. You saw the grab bag episodes the past week. What was it? 4 of them, yes, Travis? We will
every single question.
Yeah, we will build shows. If we don't get to a comment you have and you want to see us talk about it, we'll make that happen. Much like DG, we're trying to fill content too. That's what it is. So, for all my guys,
where can you be found, sir?
No, hold up. That hoodie is fire, damn it. And I want my right to acknowledge it here on the air, of course. For Dan Griffis, for Travis Holmes, for all the excellent commenters here. Of course, I'm Kyle Nash, the student of the game. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at the SOTG. Find me on Facebook as the student of the game. Check out my writings with the Fans First Sports Network, not only covering your Jacksonville Jaguars, but the Orlando Magic here as they try to scrape in to host a play-in game. I'll be a part of all that action, and I will be at Kia Center for the 8th and 9th for the penultimate and ultimate home games of this season as well. Check out my work with the Black and Gold Banneret and the Night Shift podcast and YouTube channel where I'm covering UCF spring sports tomorrow. I will be there talking to Coach Milton. He's not KZ anymore, guys. He's a coach now. Coach Milton and the quarterbacks. Check out that work. I will be there on campus with Donnie Docs, Don Struble, carrying that. Make sure you look for all that on the Night Shift YouTube channel, all those interviews and insights and all of that. And oh, by the way, the Crown Tournament is a thing that Donnie Docs is covering as they continue on in that basketball postseason a lot there. So one more time for Dan Griffis, Action Sports, Travis D. Holmes, Big Cat Country, and me, Kyle Nash, student of the game. Until next time, everyone, class dismissed. Bro, this guy